So after the Hasbro Pulse Fan Fest that took place last Friday, a couple days later, Hasbro did their Transformers brand roundtable. And what that is exactly is a whole bunch of questions were submitted from all the top-tier Transformer websites like TFW 2005, Cybertron.ca, AllSpark, T-Formers, and the like. And these questions were curated, planned, and answered today for everyone to see. And the two people that answered these questions were Lenny Panzica. For people who aren't familiar with who Lenny is, he's the current senior design manager of the Transformers brand. He replaced John Warden just last year. John had been part of the brand for 8 years prior to that, and John was the one who replaced Aaron Archer prior to that. Now, Lenny has a huge background with Transformers, so he's a good example of someone to have these questions asked to. And the other individual was that of Rand's son. Rand, in all honesty, he's a brand manager. He's been with Transformers and Hasbro for about 5 years, and prior to that, he was part of a tobacco company. So yeah. But so these questions were answered, and unfortunately, a lot of these questions were very corporate speak, very not black and white answers, but right in the middle of gray. That way, if what they say doesn't happen, they weren't lying, I guess. So we'll go through some of these and we'll find out what's going on, and I'll try to kind of figure out what's going on with the gray area of what they're saying here. So the first one they ask here, the Amazon exclusive cone heads have been on back order since last year. No one in Canada has been able to receive them. Is there going to be a second production run with these when it's done? Hasbro was not aware of the issue with Amazon having to fulfill the exclusives of the 2-packs. They are going to look into possibility of doing a second production run or re-release in the future. So at least that's good news for people who couldn't get the Conehead 2-pack from Amazon. There was a lot of difficulty with that, a lot of scalping. So it does sound like they're going to do a second production run. And it shows sometimes when you complain, it does fall on ears, because that complaining, if it equals money in their pocket, they'll take it. They'll take it. And something like Amazon, which is, a company that they have a good relationship with, they do very good money with, and because it's Amazon and it's an exclusive, it could be less numbers, less of a production run, and they don't have to worry so much, where doing a reissue of a very difficult to find figure that was meant for Walmart or something, and you're talking millions of Walmarts, it's a little bit of a different story. So good to hear that these Amazons will get a second chance for people who didn't get it. Next question here was, Transmetals or Fusors, non-basic Beast Wars or other characters, are they going to happen? And their basic answer is, if it fits within the theme of the year. That kind of, makes sense, I guess, but at the same time, I think at this point they've managed to figure out ways to fit in characters that don't fit a theme. I mean, we had 2 years of Micromasters. We had 1 year with pretender shells or not pretender shells. And even something that was supposed to be a beast year, they still managed to make it pretty much 65 to 70% G1 characters, even though it was supposed to be a beast year. So I think they'll still be able to fit things in. But again, this kind of answer protects them from saying yes and or no. I will say this about Lenny, though. Lenny has a history of loving reptiles, dinosaurs, and lizards and all that kind of stuff. And insects. And he even said that when he was working with Dark of the Moon, the character of Darksteel was an homage to Quickstrike, because he loves like reptiles, insects, snakes, stuff like that. So it wouldn't surprise me if some of these characters show up at some point just because Lenny loves them. The next question here is, Trilogies moving to a new scale, style, or carry on with what's happening right now? It says here, the goal is to keep the aesthetic and the scales that they have currently. They should keep building on it, though, even though there will be some changes, which is another gray answer where it's like, damned if you do, you damned if you don't. They just brought in Beast Wars. It would be hurting themselves to change the scale with doing the Beast Wars stuff. Story-wise, toy-wise, keeping in scale will help tell the story. So again, a lot of those like middle ground answers. Long story short, we're keeping the scales of how everything is, the price points and all that stuff. Nothing's going to change there. No answer if they're going to keep doing a trilogy style. They kind of avoided that one in a lot of ways. Will Hasbro commit to finishing G1 on-screen characters in future lines? Specifically, all the pre-movie characters, which currently list at 19. They said, we are aware of them. We'll probably get to them eventually. Of course they will, because they're all trademark names. Design philosophies are about micro collections. It's a long game, but that's the goal. So long story short with that is essentially, we'll probably get all of them. And like I said, they're all trademark names, so they got to. It's just a matter of when the time comes. And when they say micro collections, it's because there's so many sidelines and you could kind of stick some of those characters in those sidelines. You know, if you do like a Buzzworthy Bumblebee line, that's a good place to put, you know, a 2-pack of Bumblebee with a new Brawn figure. Sure, whatever. So just to reiterate, who are those 19 that they're referring to? Generation 1, Season 1 Brawn, Gears, Windcharger, Dinobot Slag, Dinobot Snarl, Dinobot Sludge, Dinobot Swoop, although Slag is going to be coming. Buzzsaw the Cassette, Insecticon Shrapnel, and Insecticon Buzzsaw, Insecticon Kickback. From the Season 2 characters, Minibot Sea Spray, Minibot Cosmos, Minibot Beachcomber, Minibot Power Glide. I have a discussion about Power Glide coming in the future, actually. G1 Blaster. I've always been pushing for that one. Perceptor, Skids, and Blitzwing. Along with, hopefully, they're pushing here for maybe a Devastator Combiner again. So it's something that, again, it's all in their radar. It's just a matter of when. And again, anyone who's a regular listener of this podcast knows that when is when a trademark's coming up. That's the most logical thing. But a lot of these guys, when they answer these questions, they don't want to do the corporate kind of and the business side of it because they don't expect the fandom to know that unless you're a listener of this podcast where I constantly push that kind of education. But it is what it is, like I say. Next up here, segments and marketing. So, Cyclonus, RC and Kingdom. Should they have been Studio Series 86 and why? That's the question. Wasn't sure at first if Studio Series 86 would be welcomed into the Studio Series line, but they tried it and it worked, looking deeper into characters moving forward. So essentially what they're pretty much saying here is when they did the Studio Series 86 line, they didn't know how people was going to react to it, which I almost find kind of silly, and if anything, a little disconnected to how much the fandom loves that movie and those characters. But since there is success with it, they will be moving forward and putting more of those characters into a future Studio Series 86 continuation. And that is why characters like Cyclonus and the reissue RC ended up in Kingdom. They were kind of worried. It wouldn't have worked out. But, I mean, come on, guys. Really? 86 movie? Ask any true-blooded Transformer fan, and that's the best Transformer movie ever made. I mean, let's get real here, you know? Here, this one I like. The Ark, is it the last Titan? And then Lenny said, come on. And then he laughs. Who told you that? And then he follows up by saying, can't confirm or deny officially. So I love how it's like, oh, come on, we're going to do more. And then can't confirm and or deny. So as far as we're concerned, another gray corporate answer. I mean, if they don't do Titans ever again, they're not liars. If they do Titans again, they're not liars. So it's that safe answer because the rumor that I keep hearing online is that they want to discontinue it and just do 2 commander classes instead of just 1 giant Titan. But we shall see what's happening with that. That's never been confirmed, but I mean, we got a gray answer once again from Hasbro, even when posed with that question. Here we have, the Ark wasn't inspired by the last Autobot in the comics. A lot of people know this already, but I might as well read it. Starting with John Warden and finished with Lenny, has a touch of the last Autobot with a Generations kind of styling. The G1 aspect is from Teletran 1, touches with everything. So again, anyone who had a sharp eye would have known that. Packaging, the retro style releases, modern figures and retro packaging. Any plans to continue that? He says there's lots of positive feedback and a lot of potential there. Nothing is one and done. Everything, when done well, will continue or in a similar fashion. Doesn't mean it sold well. Doesn't mean it didn't sell well. All they know is that people like it. But are people buying it? That's always the most important question. That's what determines if it continues. And, retro packaging always surfaces every couple of years anyways. So even if it doesn't do well and a line gets discontinued, it comes up again in the future. This is a good one. What and how do you decide will be store exclusives and why? Again, they don't answer the true reason from a corporate standpoint. They just give this pretty much here. This is what they say here. Unique to retailers and what's going on in the main line, we have requests. Hasbro has plans, and they discuss it from there. Pretty much the more simple answer for that is Walmart goes, yo, we want exclusives, and we want to have like a rollout of 8 of them. And then Hasbro creates those plans and shows it to them, and then they go, okay, and then that's it. And obviously there's pitches back and forth to get those companies excited, because when Walmart makes a pitch to have exclusives, they pay big money for that. And that's why, like, when people complain about exclusives with Hasbro or Target, the reality is money talks. And as much as you might not like it, Walmart turns to Hasbro, or Target turns to Hasbro and goes, yeah, here's $1 billion. Make us a Shattered Glass exclusive subline. They're going to do it. Then there's the mention here. Hard things to get like G1, Soundwave, and a retro alt mode to be picked up by Walmart. They said here, it's not a hard sell at all. Netflix partnership worked overall. If it works with the messaging, drives people in stores, it shouldn't be a problem. They mentioned the concerns of morality or QC issues. Great partners. I have no idea what they're trying to get at with that. There's probably something that was written in between those statements, especially the morality part. Who knows what's going on with that one? The RED line, is it continuing, and will it still be exclusives? It's done well. There's future plans. Can't say more about it right now. So according to them, it's selling well. Imagine, well, of course, they started with a whole bunch of initial Legendary 7 characters, which always sell well. The future characters that have been leaked and planned kind of deviate a little bit from that. Already we're going into an RC and Cheetor, and then the potential knockout from Transformers Prime. Let's see the numbers with those ones, and if those sell well, and what will be the continue for the line. They can't say anything. That's just how it is. Follow-up question. Studio. Super 7's Ultimates line. Any discussion about that? Do you find there's overlap? They're different figures, they're different sizes, articulation is a different style. They're more focused on an old school retro vibe, where Hasbro is more posable and detailed. Not a big concern, not worried about overlap. And from my own personal perspective, completely different price points and marketed audiences. The audiences that are picking up Cheetors and Soundwaves have no clue who a Bonsaitron is, or an Action Master styled Bombshell. So it's also different audiences and collectors and wallet sizes. Teams. Still on the goal of completing them, making them complete, such as Dinobots, Insecticons, etc. They're saying 100% losing opportunities if we didn't. So essentially, they do want to complete stuff like the Dinobots, Insecticons, or whatever. They don't just make one member and call it a day. So that's pretty much implying, which we kind of already know, they're going to try to finish those Studio Series Dinobots and potentially other teams like Triple Changers or whatnot. Beast Wars, are there plans to continue past Kingdom? Will we get all Season 1 and Season 2 characters, one of each character, etc.? And he said here, John Warden's goal with Kingdom was cracking the surface so they could get more characters into Generations going forward. Used to do that, and now there's more on the way. Generations is now the way to tell future stories, drive forward. Now the chains are off so they could get things to work in. Yeah, so what they're pretty much trying to say is, and I feel the same way, I think we're going to see more Beast Wars, even if it doesn't fit the narrative. I feel that there's always been a spot in the Generations line since the beginning to fit those obscure characters. Pretty much like, maybe not with classics, but when we had Universe 2.0, and that started, and we started getting Cheetor and Dinobot, and then with Generations, we were getting even more off the rails, where we were getting Armada Starscream and Tankor. There's always a way to fit in those characters, and if you have a narrative especially, you could fit it in even more. And Especially, it doesn't even have to be dictated by a kind of fiction, because we get a whole bunch of toys in something like Earthrise that are Generation 1 throwbacks and Micromasters, from 90s G1 throwbacks, and they don't have to be part of the narrative in the Netflix series. So I feel that it's just something that we're going to get personally. Takara Tomy Armada, aka Micron Optimus Prime Convoy. What's up with that? No comment at this point, but more to come. I've had a firm stance on this. Next year is the 20th anniversary of Transformers Armada, aka Micron Legend. I'm sure they're going to do something. I'm sure. And that Armada Optimus Prime, I think we would have learned more about it if we didn't have our little Big V situation. But he's going to probably be making a appearance next year for sure, because of a certain 20th anniversary of the line. Will they go back to all new series with new characters other than Generations? Can't confirm and or deny, sorry. Once again, another middle of the ground answer. They also ask here, they said, can you tell us more about an all-new Transformers show, possibly from Nick or Netflix, Nickelodeon? And they said no comment at this time. Again, they probably don't have a lot of information on those, or they have no idea. And the last question they got here is, Shattered Glass plans to use molds that are not currently active. Yes, they need to balance the state of the mold, costs, what works with different characters, who fits best, aka what makes sense, pretty much. And that's more or less it. Again, we didn't learn too much from this. I think the big takeaway, honestly, from everything that I just read here is, number one, we're going to see at some point reissues of the Amazon Coneheads. It probably tells us that if there was other Amazon exclusives, if there was a big push for it, we could probably see those getting reissued too, if the demand is there. So it shows that there's a flexibility with reissuing some of those exclusives with Amazon because of the way the production is done specifically with that company. So that's good news, at least, as opposed to, say, something like Walmart, where a reissue of that Bumblebee, maybe that mold will find another place, but that original Netflix Bumblebee will not see a reissue because of just how big the numbers would have to be. And the other thing that really we could take away from this more than anything else is just the mention of how Studio Series 86 was handled, and how stuff like Cyclonus and RC probably would have been inside the Studio Series 86 line. They just didn't do that because they were kind of worried. And moving forward, now that there's confidence in Studio Series 86, we'll see more of that line and more characters that belong in that line instead of outside of it in a Generations Kingdom kind of ecosystem. That's about it, really. Not much else to say aside from that. Kind of a lot of those middle of the road answers that we kind of get from Hasbro in general. I kind of got used to these every year at BotCon. Same thing with the BotCon Q&As with Hasbro. But that's how it is, my friends. So let me know what you think about this. Are you excited about stuff? I mean, there's not much I could take away from it. Even the whole thing about the Ark being the last Titan, they didn't want to confirm and or deny it. So a lot of gray.